Greetings and bienvenue, crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Very long time lurker. First time poster here. In late May 2019, I was almost murdered at gunpoint. I survived by seemingly random chance. As the months passed, I found myself going through the motions of what I thought was PTSD. However, now I am starting to believe that perhaps something more unexplainable has happened. My two running theories are, I have either developed schizophrenia or more fantastically, I have quantumly jumped into another timeline. I'd be more than welcome to explain my situation in detail to anyone willing to offer insight. I'll start telling my story of that night. I have weekly hangouts with a friend group every Friday. We either play D&D, board games, vidya, watch movies, drink, whatever we're feeling. This night, I am heading out of the basement after watching a movie with two friends. Third friend went to bed early before it was over. I was getting undressed and getting in bed when I heard a pounding at the door. I assumed one of the awake friends had gone out to their car to get a phone charger or something, which has happened before. I went to unlock the door, and as I opened it, a man pushed his way in and almost pushed me down the basement stairs. He was frantic and shouting about a group of men outside, chasing him and trying to murder him. I live in a woods. I made it to my kitchen, where I kept my trusty kitchen gun tucked away in a cabinet. As I grabbed it and tried to load it, the stranger continued to urge that men were about to burst in the house and mow us down. As I loaded that shitty old revolver, he punched me in the face out of nowhere. The next thing I knew, the gun and ammo case were in his hand. I struggled with him and tried to calm him down, but he pried free and fled down the hallway. That was my only gun, and I still didn't know if anyone else was about to burst in the house. I grabbed the house phone and quickly called my mother and sister. They both live right down the road, and I simply stated that there was a man in the house with a gun. I needed them to call 911 and stay on the line while I gave my full attention to this man in my house. If you're wondering why an American didn't just gun down a stranger in their house, my very first thought that put me in this position was, if my two friends are down in the basement and the other in the guest bedroom, I don't want to scare them by killing a man. I found the man in the hallway loading the gun. I stood and tried to calm him while he continued to say that there were people coming after him. I knew for sure now it was bullshit, but I needed a way to subdue him properly. He was getting heated and pacing the hallway, right outside the guest bedroom. I told him what he wanted to hear, that I needed a weapon too to help him fight the bad people coming in. I grabbed a large knife hidden in my bedroom, and he immediately forgot that and thought I wanted to fight him. Well, now I wanted to at this point. I was in a showdown with him when there was a sound at the back door. He darted down the corner, through the bathroom, which has a door at the other end, to the back door landing. I chased after and he fired. I heard a scream. It was my mom. The stupid idiot decided to jump in the car and drive to my house, while my sister correctly called 911 and cowered at home. His shot narrowly missed her, and I came at him and put the knife to his throat and said some badass, dumbass shit. I went to end it, and he quickly turned the gun and pressed it into my head and pulled the trigger. It misfired, and at that very moment my mother pulled me off of him and the police arrived. Here's where things get bizarre. My friends in the basement swore to me that I'd come down there after something happened and before the police arrived. I was apparently in a fury and demanded they lie down on the couch and pretend they've been sleeping through it all for when the cops arrive. My friend in the bedroom had seemed to have had earbuds in, listening to music while they slept during the whole ordeal. My mom claims she woke them up after. My mom, bedroom friend, and two basement friends. They were all present, and each one seemed more and more off since then, in the smallest ways, until they were unrecognizable.
Do you think that you've changed since the event too?
I became a little suspicious I was having PTSD and talked to each of the friends that were present at the time about it. I assured them that I was doing my best to be okay, and was confident I would be. They all seemed to behave like I was frankly being dramatic. My mom has done a complete 180 with her personality. She's calm, somewhat cheerful, but overall cynical about things. She used to be brash, bold, and passionate. She has been through worse, so I wouldn't call it a direct aftermath. Sleepy bedroom friend went from a codependent NEET to a totally functional normies who got a good job and girlfriend. Basement friends are now distant, cold, and unresponsive about things. Still come around fairly often, but are more and more like strangers. None of the friends even saw this man, but the defining factor is each of these people were in that house at the moment the intruder pulled the trigger against my head.
As a child, I remember riding my bike down the road. I was nearing the top of a hill. A driver was speeding up the hill, going way too fast without paying attention. One of my neighbors noticed what was about to happen and screamed at them to stop, and they did, just before hitting me. I suppose I was lucky, but here comes the /X/ part. As the car neared me, I felt a strange sensation. There was a kind of buzzing electric current in my head. The only thing I could compare it to is the feeling you get just before you are about to have an out-of-body experience. To this day, I wonder if I survived that event, or if I actually died and was transported to a parallel universe where the car never hit me.
I had a near-death experience and it was weird. I was 7 or 8 years old. I don't remember exactly, but it was my second year of school. My mom used to take me to school together with her friend and her son. School buses aren't a thing here. I used to play with my mom's friend's son on the way from school. We usually just run and try to catch each other. Our mothers used to walk together behind us, keeping an eye on us. So as usual, I was running, trying to catch my friend. He ran and crossed the road. It was a small road that's usually empty, so it wasn't a big deal. I tried to follow him. I looked right and there were no cars. Then to my left there was a car, but far away. I started running, trying to cross the road, and then suddenly everything was frozen, and I saw as if a TV was turned off. The kind of effects you get when you turn off an old CRT monitor. The view was frozen for a second while the TV thing was happening. I remember looking at my leg being extended, trying to reach the ground in a running motion. Then I don't remember what happened. I remember that I had a really long dream. Felt like it was a full night of sleep. I don't remember the details of the dream, but it didn't feel like a dream at all. But it was too lucid and clear compared to life. It felt like life was the dream, and I woke up from it and went back to sleep. Then I woke up, in real life, stood up and continued running looking for my friend. Suddenly someone called me and told me to stop. I turned back. He was a car driver who apparently hit me. My mom was running towards me. She grabbed me and inspected me to see if I had any injuries. I was fine. People told me I was unconscious for less than 30 seconds laying on the ground. That was weird, because it felt as if it was longer. Anyway, in the end, I went back home. The driver apologized, although it was my fault, and everything was fine. I got no injuries.
So, a couple of years ago, I was working on a project at home and made a mistake. I'm not going to get into what it was. Needless to say, I almost died and had a very surreal dream while I was out. Haven't been able to really figure it out, but it still haunts me. I stepped out of a doorway and turned to look out over the ocean. I could feel that this wasn't a normal dream. There was something more to it, like I was somewhere else. Everything had a green hue, almost like a mist. There was a shiny metal rail in front of me that I placed my hand on. Past the rail were 3 docks with 3 white sailboats, one at each dock. There was nothing else, just the door, me, the rail, the docks, boats, and the ocean. The boats were facing me and had their sails up. There was no wind and the water was calm. There was no sound, like I could just make out the sound of the water moving, no birds, nothing else. The boats calmly bobbed up and down as I watched them. I had this very eerie, unsettling, yet very calm feeling. It was like this place was something outside of reality. I then woke up in the hospital. Every time I think about that place, I get a chill.
I've had a near-death experience and would like to talk about it. Last week, I was in a high-risk surgery that took about 6 hours. During those hours, I've experienced an out-of-body experience, seeing myself laying down in the surgery bed and the doctor and nurses around me. I couldn't move, just watch, but I could see both viewpoints, from above and below. The point of view of my body. It was weird. However, the most interesting fact is that I saw what I believe to be my father, who died 5 years ago. Him or it didn't have a body, but instead it was just a bright light. But he spoke as if he knew me and talked about events from my life from when my dad was alive, reminiscing fondly. He had his voice and way of speaking. All of this, seeing the surgery and speaking to my dad, lasted less than 5 minutes. And when I came to, I woke up after the surgery.
Glad you made it through the surgery, OP. Doesn't really matter if it's an actual paranormal phenomenon or just your psyche dealing with reality in a way that makes sense to it. Nobody except you can know if that was really your dad or not, but if it was not something malicious, it's important to digest that experience and integrate it. In either case, you are never alone, even if you're not among other people. You can always get back in touch with these things and improve your relations with them. They have wisdom to share if you open yourself up. Do not be ashamed of entertaining it because of other people's judgment or fear of becoming a schizo. Your psyche is much more complex than what you are aware of and identify with. Good luck. If something like this were a malicious encounter, that's also important to digest and face it for what it is. Separate and integrate. Do not suppress it unless you want it to come back stronger at some point.
When I was 4, I was hit by a mail truck. I was life-flighted. At 14, I crippled myself in an accident and bled out and was dead for over a minute. Went into a void space. Can only describe it as illuminated darkness. Like I was floating in it, but it was just my thoughts. They were connected to everything and I could shoot down into certain memories. I'm not sure if these memories were solely mine either. I didn't get enough time to really search much. I've been plagued in this existence with friends killing themselves and parents going to prison. I have PTSD from my accident to this day 18 years later. I completely just space out and relive the whole episode. I can feel the warmth of bleeding out. I can feel the sadness for myself ruining my body for the rest of its time here. It was not intentional. I can see what life would have been like had I died that day. Life sucks, but it's real.
I had a strange near-death experience that still makes me wonder what exactly happens when someone dies. I have told this story so often, yet it still sounds like a fever dream, pre-written to make it more fluent. I would welcome it if you tell your story if it's similar, since I haven't met anyone in my groups that has. 3 years ago, I was extremely depressed. The only thing that is keeping me sort of working is my dog. Beloved dog dies in her sleep. I stop to function. Can barely stand up after lying there for 16 hours to eat something. Can barely sleep longer than 4 hours. To be honest, I wish to pass away from thirst or hunger, but survival instincts are strong. I decided I can't live with this pain anymore now that my only source of happiness is gone too. Get the largest knife I have and sharpen it to a razor's edge. I held the knife to my throat and tried to relax to overcome the instincts. Forced my hand down as hard as possible. The last thing I recall before passing out is an intense heat flowing down my shoulders. Find myself in an endless darkness. I can't feel nor see myself. Also didn't feel any emotions like dread, pain, or sadness. Realize I'm being pulled by some sort of force. I get drawn softly in one direction of this darkness until something violently pulls my leg. I look down. It's her, my dog. She is pulling me down to the ground as hard as possible. After staring at her, I start to feel emotions again. Intense fear of this darkness kicks in, overflowed with joy to see my dog again. I suddenly lost my footing as if the ground suddenly cracked, fall fast towards an intense white light, start to make out details, see myself lying on a bed. I fall into myself with this momentum, instantly regain consciousness in my body, throat is burning. Sit up and breathe in deeply from the shock of the fall, pain, and overall regained ability to feel. A nurse freaks out and calls for a doctor. Turns out I have been in a coma for over a month because of my inhero attempt. The only reason I didn't bleed out then and there was because a neighbor saved me. He said a dog scratched at his bedroom's window and barked until he followed it to my kitchen window. Since that was 1 month ago, he forgot most details, but I'm 100% sure it was her, my dog. She somehow came back from the dead to save my life. This
combined with the medication and intense care, made me get out of depression. I still have a picture of her, but I'm not comfortable to share it online. But pic-related is similar enough.
So you could see your leg when she pulled it? And was anything different cognition-wise when you woke up? I had a similar experience coming out of a diabetic coma when I was 12. I fell into myself but tried to resist it by clutching around me, and I could feel myself grasping, but not see my arms or a body at all. I wasn't in blackness. Mine was a salmon or coral-colored mist, and it felt very safe, warm, like I was being cradled in pure love. The mist started to dissipate, and I saw my body in the hospital bed beneath me. And when I realized I was moving toward it, I tried clinging to the place that I was, because I didn't want to go back into my body. As soon as I made contact with it, my actual eyes opened, and there I was, awake and alive. Learned I fell into a coma on the drive to the hospital and had been in one for 3 days. Time made no sense to me when I woke up though, and when it was explained to me it seemed like the most ridiculous nonsense ever. I couldn't understand why people made it a point to split time into measurable fragments like seconds and minutes and then track them and live by this system. At first I thought it was a joke, then a trick, then after learning how to read an analog clock again, I just went with it.
Actually, yes, and I had in fact jokingly suspected at time that everything after that point has been a dream, fantasy, or whatever. It was back in early 2008. I was in college and had just took a calculus midterm, which I was sure I had bombed, so I wasn't feeling too good about that. I was listening to music as I came to a street where a bus stop is, and I looked to my left and saw a bus coming. So I just assumed that it was going to stop at the bus stop right to my left. That did not happen, and so I took one step into the street, and the bus whizzed past me no more than a few inches in front of my face. I was so shaken by this that even though I had only taken one step into the street, the only thing I could think of was get across the street instead of step back. So without looking at the incoming traffic on the other side, I did just that and crossed the street. No more than a couple seconds after I reached the other side, another bus came speeding past me. It was the closest I've ever come to death twice over.
2. I don't recall, just blackouts and wakes, one of which my heart stopped, the other not 100% sure. I had an experience which I think was close to cardiac arrest. I was fully lucid. It was a time of experiments and youth. One evening I found myself home alone and decided to stay in and party. Anyway, it was all the usual routine, until all of a sudden my heart felt like a gear skipping, and I felt like I was moving my chest but had no oxygen. I felt sick and could feel vomiting coming on at the same time. It was quick and shocking. I went out to the balcony to get air, but there was no air. I felt weak. My heart was beating quickly and then skipping. The skip felt like a vacuum pressure hole. I fell to my knees, then lay on my side. My body was in distress. I was vomiting, had no strength, and I didn't feel like crying. But tears were coming out. Then I knew. I had to hold on, control myself, and slow down. I know I have to control my body. I felt my thoughts come to life like instructions. It was windy, and there is a tree so close to my balcony. I am looking at it. The beautiful light fading, and the branches and the leaves I know and feel. My body is in distress, but I no longer am. I am just with the tree. Then I think I have to breathe slowly and with control, lie on my side, and slow my heart. I think I can't breathe well, but must keep repeating shallow breathing until it works again, until oxygen comes back. I lie there staring at the tree moving, and I move with it, breath and heart slow, painful like a vacuum, and what seemed like forever. Tears going down my face, I vomited, and still I stayed. Eventually I felt breath in me. The feeling of breath was so good. The agony relieved, and just breathe. I lay there for hours. My heartbeat got better. It was night now, and I don't know how long it all lasted. After I rose slowly, weak but like floating, I went to bed and sleep.
Be me. I work at a gas station. Low effort, pretty easy. One day a guy comes in for smokes. Sell them to him, no problem. He leaves. A minute later, guy comes back in. Forgot something. Get him settled. He leaves again. I start messing around on my phone. Suddenly, a fucking minivan backs through the wall. Shit's so close I can touch it. Minivan pulls out of the wall and drives away. Rubble is everywhere, but somehow I'm unharmed. Fuck. Gather enough peace of mind to call 911. They help me get the story. Turns out that the guy who bought cigs left his car running when he came back in. Some crazy woman took the opportunity to steal his car and ran into the station when he tried to stop her. After giving a statement to the cops, they let me go back into the station to grab stuff from behind the counter. It too is unharmed somehow. Notice there's a very small circle where no rubble hit, and that's where I was standing. PIC related. Also search Boulder gas station and look for articles from April.
I was very sick as a little kid, severe asthma. I caught the flu when I was about 4. 2 things happened. When I first got sick, I fell asleep, and guess my asthma attack got started while asleep and was very bad. I dreamed that I was on a long track, ascending into the sky. It is a train of open white cars. They looked like those kiddie mine train cars you see at Six Flags, etc. But it wasn't going fast. It was just cruising along up and up. It finally reached a platform and there were a few other people getting off the train. I got off and was greeted by a young girl, though older than me. She looked to be about 10 to 12 and was the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. It wasn't so much looks as she exuded love. She was love and smiled at me. I felt more love for her than I did my parents. I just felt full of love looking at her. Then she told me my ride didn't end yet, and I just got to look around. She helped me back on the ride and I started back down. I don't remember any more of it after that, but I remember the cars, and for the longest time, until my teens, I could recall that feeling of love so much I yearned to see her again. I was put in the hospital that time. The other thing that happened was in the hospital. I was in an oxygen tent over my bed. I had pneumonia by that time. I don't remember much from when I was put in. I woke up in the middle of the night. All the room was dark except for the lights of the equipment and a couple of night lights. There were about 4 kid beds in the room. Each bed was backed against the side walls and the door was at the front of the room. Anyway, I woke up and saw a super bright light opening up next to my bed. The wall next to me had a door opening, and the brightest light I had ever seen was streaming through. An older couple walked in, a man and woman. They looked as old or older than my grandparents, only had one set alive. They smiled at me, talked to me, and told me I was going to be just fine. They stayed a while, then left. When they were leaving, the door opened, and it was so bright you couldn't see anything in there. The next morning, I woke up. Fever was gone, breathing was good, and I was hungry. Mum and Dad were so surprised. I asked them who that was that came to visit in the night. They asked who I was talking about. Dad was concerned and went to ask the nurse about them. They told him no one came to see me. They asked me what they looked like, and I told them as best a 4-year-old could. They asked me where they came from, and I pointed at the wall next to my bed and said the door here. There was no door, but in my kid's mind, I said they must have taken it with them. They thought I was just dreaming and feverish, but I still know what I saw then. I can still remember it.
It seems that a common theme in near-death experiences is that a choice is offered. Whether it be from a relative, a guardian angel, a light, or something else, it seems that it offers either to go back to life or to venture further into the ethereal realm. Why does it seem to happen so often? Unless you could choose when you go back to, I feel like curiosity would be too great to not pick that choice.
The fear always brings us back anyway. There is no point. If you aren't irreparably damaged, there is a good chance you will plead for your life, as did I and so many others who failed, but it comes at a cost. You won't remember the price, but you will feel it. Since you must be somewhat decent to get an offering in the first place, it will be very internal. None of that shit like someone dying in your family or anything, just like many things will remind you of your ill-doing. And it will take hard work and dedication to get yourself out of that, depending on how severe your injury was or would have been without protection. The whole trade is divine in nature, but if you keep fucking up, another force may take its place to the point where you would recognize it as not divine or something else, which in turn may take something more valuable through your own means, violence and mental illness. Take care, my dudes, and if you really, really want to do it, don't, or make sure it fucking works.
That may have been your experience, but from what I've heard and read about near-death experiences, a lot of the people who come back to the physical world were forced to do so, even though they strongly wanted to leave this world behind. Other people go back willingly because they feel like they still have things they need to accomplish here, or people who depend on them here. In neither case is fear for oneself a motivating factor. In fact, one of the things that nearly all near-death experiences report is a total absence of fear during the experience, and losing all fear of death after the experience. In any case, I am irreparably damaged, and I don't have anyone depending on me, so fuck it. I'm not staying here if I don't have to. One of the things you hear a lot in near-death accounts is that the person started to remember that what we might call the afterlife is actually our home, and they remember what it's like there and why they decided to incarnate on Earth for a while. So I'm not sure there would really be a lot of curiosity. You'd know what's on the other side. From what I've read, people decide to go back to Earth because there's still some stuff they want to do here before heading home. I've also seen several stories where someone wasn't given a choice and was instead told that they had to return to Earth because they still had things to do here. If I were given the choice, I'd tell Earth to fuck off. Fuck Earth. Not only would I want to get the fuck off this planet, I'd want to forget that this life ever happened and never see anyone I know from this life again.
You actually died, and your consciousness jumped to an alternative reality/multiverse where the slight difference of order in the universe has created some kind of cosmic chaos around you. In other words, your consciousness materialized again to a place where you didn't die, causing a combustion of disorder which, when experienced, imitates what you're currently describing in an attempt to subdue all the events in your life that would have caused you to end up dying in that situation. The reason for that being is your soul, consciousness, subconscious, is aware that it will eventually come back as a new person, but because this process is extremely traumatic, having to remember memories, learn new things all over again as a baby, etc., etc., it's been trying to find a way to not die by changing dimensions and changing habits/choices, etc. That would have inevitably lead to you physically dying and nullifying them in the next dimension so that it learns not to do that dumb shit in the next time you actually reincarnate. This experience is usually associated with a soul that's reincarnated more than 1,000 times, so good game, well played, you infinite fuck. Pay attention and be a better person, both to yourself and to others.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.